pro-choice activists are fighting against a proliferation of crisis pregnancy centres across the country. CPCs, as they're referred to, are clinics often run by pro-life Christian groups that try and talk women out of getting an abortion. Journalist Catherine Bennett from the France 24 Observers desk has been following the story and joins me now in the studio. Catherine, thanks for coming in. Tell me a little bit about these CPCs, how they operate and where they're actually located.
So CPCs are these centres that take an anti-abortion stance, and the majority of them don't have medical licensing or even doctors on staff. However, they try to give the impression that they are medical centres. And the thing is, there are CPCs in every state. So if we look at 3 particular states in particular, for instance, in Kentucky, there are 74 CPCs, and as you said earlier, there's only 1 real abortion clinic left that is actually able to provide abortions. Then in Texas, there are 311 CPCs and only 16 abortion clinics, and bearing in mind that Texas is geographically larger than France. And then in Missouri, there are 114 CPCs, and again, only 1 abortion clinic left.
So how many of these are fake clinics as opposed to actual abortion clinics?
Well, there are far more CPCs than there are real abortion clinics across the United States. And the most recent data for abortion clinics is from 2014. And that tells us that in that year, there were 788 real abortion clinics, whereas nowadays there are over 4,000 CPCs.
That's an extraordinary figure. And pro-choice activists have found that these so-called CPCs give factually incorrect information to pregnant women who are looking for advice.
That's right. So in my research, I was surprised by the lengths that these CPCs do go to dissuade women from having an abortion. So for instance, the centres will look like a medical facility. The staff will wear white lab coats, even though they don't actually have medical licenses. And one of the biggest lies that they do tell women is monetary. So if financial problems are one of the obstacles in you keeping the child, then these CPCs can tell you that the state will provide. The state will provide for your rent for the first year, or they'll pay for your education to keep you in university while you have the child.
So who is actually bankrolling them?
So with funding, it's being cut for real abortion clinics all over America, but it's actually going the other way for CPCs. So lots of states are actually funneling money out of poverty alleviation funds. So for instance, in Missouri, $6 million of the state budget is being siphoned off a fund that offers cash assistance to families in poverty, and that helps children to go to school and to eat. And in order to be eligible for this money, the CPCs in that state are required to dissuade women from having an abortion.
Now, you had an extraordinary conversation with one activist who did a lot of research into this story. What did she tell you?
Yes, so I spoke to an activist who's part of NARAL, which is a pro-choice advocacy organisation in the United States. And one of the things that NARAL does is they do secret shopping. So there's this idea that they'll send an activist to essentially go undercover to research these CPCs and see what are the services that they're providing to women who come looking for help. So the women I spoke to had done some secret shopping at around 15 CPCs throughout the state of Minnesota. And some of the stories she tells are really shocking. So what she would do is she would have a little bottle of urine from a pregnant woman, so that when she did the pregnancy test, she would come up as pregnant, and then she would ask about her options. And some of the things that they would tell her, they would say to her variously that her boyfriend would definitely break up with her were she to have an abortion. There's an increased risk of breast cancer or a higher rate of suicide for women who have had an abortion, both of which are categorically untrue. They would also say things like she would have difficulty conceiving if she wanted to have a family later on after having had an abortion, which again isn't true. And more worryingly, they would lie about how far along she is. So, for instance, they would say that she had until the 9-month mark to make a decision, which, of course, if she acted on that information, she would be forced to carry the child to term.
So how is this impacting the sort of national debate on reproductive rights? And are there any actual state bodies who are taking actions against these CPCs?
Well, obviously, it's a hugely controversial topic, and there's this real chasm between the two camps. But people are steadily wising up to the existence of CPCs, and there's a campaign ongoing at the moment called Expose Fake Clinics, in which various organisations across the states are asking women to identify and expose the clinics, the CPCs that are operating in their area. So hopefully at least more and more women will be aware of what to expect if they do go to one of these faith-based centres. In terms of legislation, things are moving very slowly. And in fact, it's probably more likely for states to enact anti-abortion legislation than it is for the reverse. But having said that, Washington and California are two states that have passed laws which require CPCs to be honest in all communication and marketing, that they are not healthcare facilities and cannot provide abortions.
Catherine, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.